Welcome to this video, a case study of an LIDC. You know that you have studied Ethiopia, and this covers most of the dynamic development module. The specification asks you to cover a number of different elements, and our focus is to really look at this one case study of an LIDC to answer these sub-questions. How has Ethiopia developed so far? What global connections influence its development? And what development strategy is most appropriate? You need to obviously know where Ethiopia is. And you can see it here, situated in East Africa. And you know that it's a landlocked country, so it has no coastline. It's surrounded by 5 different countries: Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, Sudan, and also South Sudan. It's the 10th largest in Africa, and it has the 2nd largest population with over 109 million people. The capital is Addis Ababa with a population of 5.3 million. To put it into context, London's population is just over 8.6 million. So looking at the level of development in Ethiopia, its GNI per capita is $790 compared to a world average of $17,840. Its level of wealth per person is significantly less than other LIDCs across the world. So although it's classified as an LIDC, it's actually very much less than most of the LIDCs that you know. High birth rate and slow death rate equals this very fast and growing population. It has a long history of disease, poverty, and political unrest. It has a human development index of 0.463 with a low life expectancy of only 65 years. The UK's life expectancy is 79 for males and 81 for females. And it's very reliant on agriculture, with 89% of all of its exports coming from primary commodities to do with agriculture. The country receives more imports than exports, so we know that it has a trade deficit. So it's importing a lot more than it's exporting. So looking at the physical geography of Ethiopia, it's on a tri-point convergence of the African, Arabian, and Somali plate. The east is hot and the west is cold. Dalol is the hottest settlement on Earth, where they produce a lot of salt. It has blue lava. Erte Ale is their active volcano, and Ras Dashen is the highest peak there. Lake Tana is their largest lake, and the Blue Nile source is in Ethiopia near Lake Tana. The uplands has agriculture, so that's where they're producing a lot of their coffee and pulses. So the human geography of Ethiopia, we know it's divided into lots of different regions, and we know that Addis Ababa is the capital. Dire Dawa is the 2nd largest city there. And we know that there are lots of different tribes with lots of different land disputes. It was the only African country never to be colonized. Italy tried. It has lots of UNESCO sites, and it's the 2nd most populated country in Africa. The Afar people in Ethiopia, live in that Dalol region where temperatures can reach 45 degrees centigrade. As I said, it's the hottest settlement on Earth. To help with their development, they're building roads. So they're trying to double the road network. And obviously this is one of the ways to get out of poverty, improving that infrastructure. It means that subsistence farmers can trade, people can access education and healthcare. So what are the influences upon its development? The first one is political. Ethiopia has suffered from various civil and military unrests in the past. The Derg government, 1974 to 1987, killed thousands and terrorized people to cause many to migrate as refugees. But the government is now more stable since it's been a republic in 1991. But have a look on YouTube to see the recent developments of politics in Ethiopia. The social influences in 1984 to 85, the famine there killed over 1 million people in just 1 year, due to drought and high food prices. The growing population is causing a food deficit. People have a growing trust of the government, but free speech is still limited. Now, the physical influences, the rainfall there is unpredictable, hence the famine and drought, but it makes agriculture very difficult. You've got inaccessibility, water shortages, and infestations of diseases make valuable land difficult to farm. Drought-affected areas has caused over-farming and desertification too. From an economic perspective, agriculture makes up most of the country's economy. There's a real reliance on agriculture, and that's vulnerable, obviously, to climate change. The economy is now growing, meaning fewer people are in poverty as they move from primary to secondary. So the income in the secondary and tertiary sectors is growing, particularly in tourism. Now, if we look at Rostow's model, you can see it's made up of 5 different stages. Stage 1, traditional society, where we're working on subsistence economy. It's like small scale agriculture. I would say actually that Ethiopia is definitely moving out of this. So moving definitely into stage 2. Those preconditions for takeoff, more commercial agriculture, increased wealth and investment, like Philippines. And then stage 3, takeoff, secondary manufacturing dominates, increased infrastructure and government expenditure. Our modern example there would be Thailand. And then you've got this drive to maturity. So increasingly becoming self-sufficient with a diverse economy, rapid urbanization, tertiary services are dominant, like China. And then that high mass consumption. We all know that because we live in that, with services dominating, increased personal wealth leading to consumerism. So we've already said this, but it's a model showing the 5 stages of development from traditional society to high mass consumption. Ethiopia is between stage 1 and 2 on the model. Stage 5 is us, the USA, France. There are physical factors that get in the way of development for Ethiopia. It's unreliable rainfall, drought, access to safe water is lacking and it's landlocked. But there are also human factors that get in the way. The politics, they're currently fighting another war, the healthcare there is developing, and the history of famine and war. With a negative balance of trade means Ethiopia imports more than it exports. And it could appear that Ethiopia is in stage 1, but really it's in between the 2. The government spending has led to improvements in healthcare and education, with the arrival of transnational corporations and improving infrastructure. It seems stage 2 is more appropriate. So preconditions for takeoff are emerging. Now, you know that the Millennium Development Goals were started in the year 2000, and this looks at the progress that was made in Ethiopia up to 2015. You can see that it made good progress with Millennium Development Goal number 2, primary education, number 4, child mortality, and number 5, maternal health. Pause the video here and do a quick summary mind map of the positives and the negatives in relation to Ethiopia's success at achieving the Millennium Development Goals. So poverty decreased from 30% in 2011 to 24% in 2016. The poorest 10% did not experience any growth, though, in income since 2005. 60% go to school in Ethiopia from age 7 to 13. Education is free until grade 10. On average, kids spend 4 to 6 hours a day in school. 350,000 go to university. 80% live in rural areas, and women are responsible for agriculture. 65% of women here have experienced FGM, female genital mutilation. Primary female education went from 21% to 91%. They're struggling to minimise deaths of under 5s. Mortality rate is decreasing though. 96,000 die from neonatal causes. Numbers with HIV and AIDS has decreased. In 2015, it was 1.1 million people, and in 2018, it's down to 690,000. The percentage of households with safe water is 58.25%. More rural and urban sanitisation, 60 to 80% though. So it's on track to meet that target, with one of the lowest, obviously, CO2 contributors. Now, Ethiopia's goals, Millennium Development Goals, changed into the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. Here's their progress up to 2019. And you can see that there are 17 goals in total, but there are only 8 showing progress here. Again, pause the video and add this to your mind map. Looking at those global connections. So how is Ethiopia globally connected? What's globalization? That connection, that process of connecting with other countries around the world. You can see its total value of exports is 3 billion. And these are the percentages of what they are exporting, mainly coffee, vegetables, legumes, pulses and oil seeds, animals, and flowers. So as a stage 1 to 2 country, it's not surprising that 80% of their exports and 46% of their national GDP is from agriculture. It's one of the world's largest producers of food and flowers, although this economy is vulnerable, obviously, to climate change and global price changes. So it's not particularly satisfactory in relation to helping it to develop. It's not stable at all. But it has other connections here, and you can see those nations that it's exporting to in purple, and the nations it's importing from, and those relationships it's developed where it's exporting and importing. So it has links with other nations, which relates to Millennium Development Goal number 8. The increase in international trade is evidence that the government and the economy are becoming more stable. The imports shown include the products expected for a developing nation, with refined petroleum, obviously needed for manufacturing industries particularly, and construction materials, showing investment in improving infrastructure and building quality. These are some of the transnationals that have located in Ethiopia. So Hilton, Siemens, General Electric, Afroflora, Dow Chemicals, and H&M. And you know what they do here, it describes that there. And there are some really good things about transnationals. They give investment in hotel infrastructure, which can increase tourism. The workers in hotels are often paid a fair wage, and they may have access to their facilities out of hours. And it brings employment and therefore income. But there are some downsides too. Workers in LIDCs are often paid a very low salary, and working conditions can be difficult. And the companies are obviously wanting to make a profit. And the reason they're there is because regulations on wages and working conditions are less strict than in more developed locations. Have a go at this exam question. So your case study obviously is Ethiopia. So for an LIDC you have studied, assess how successful it's been in meeting 2 of the Millennium Development Goals. Now, if you were to bug this question, you would box the word assess and you would underline those keywords. 2 is one that you would underline. You don't do 1 and you don't do 3. You do 2. How successful? So you are looking at underlining the word successful and Millennium Development Goals. Pause the video here and plan out your answer, making sure that you give 1 sentence at what the Millennium Development Goals were, and then outlining the success, making a point of the first one that you want to look at. Doesn't matter whether it met the goal or not, make a point, give that evidence and explain in detail. How did you do? Here's your mark scheme, making sure that you have demonstrated thorough knowledge of the Millennium Development Goals with well-developed ideas, and it has to be place specific. That's the most important in order to get a level 3. If you didn't quite reach it, there's the mark scheme for level 2 and level 1. This is a model answer. I'll read it to you. There are 8 Millennium Development Goals, and out of these, Ethiopia had met or partially met 3 of them by 2015. Millennium Development Goal number 2 is primary education. Ethiopia has made excellent progress with this. 96% of students are enrolled in primary education, an increase from 50% in 1990. Literacy is low, however, at 36%, which shows that while children are being educated, the provision is not that effective. The gender divide also highlights the flaws in meeting this target, with more males than females in education. This divide increases at secondary level. The second development goal that Ethiopia has made excellent progress is in maternal health, which is goal number 5. Maternal deaths have increased 23% due to better health care before and after giving birth. Many women, 55%, receive contraception, even though there is a stigma around family planning. The average age of women becoming pregnant is increasing, and there are less forced pregnancies. Overall, Ethiopia has made good progress with both number 2 and 5 with development goals. You could, if you wanted to, just quickly share that obviously they moved into sustainable development goals, but that is not part of the question. So whether you choose to or not is up to you. Good luck.